A former secret agent named Deacon arrives in Manila, Philippines, waiting for an operation to donate a kidney to his dying niece. We see him enter the hotel as if it were a normal day, but inside we notice a man with a menacing look making a call. Deacon checks in and goes to his room. The next day, Deacon is relaxing in a tub with ice. From that moment, the protagonist starts having flashbacks of the night before. He was venturing out onto the streets, and at one point saw a man arguing with a woman. A fight begins between the two. The attacker is skilled, but he doesn't stand a chance against Deacon. He teaches the attacker a lesson, and the latter sneaks off. The attractive young woman, Anna, remains on the ground, frightened. Deacon asks her if she's all right, and she offers to get him a drink. They go to the nearest bar, and the bartender offers them a shot. Anna invites him to dance, but says he's not flexible enough. As you may have already guessed, later they go to his hotel room and have a good time. Anna gives him a drink, and he passes out. Deacon regains consciousness the next day, and he's panicking and walking around the room. He checks the bed and finds a puddle of blood. He is petrified, and when he looks in the mirror, he notices his pale face. But more importantly, he notices a cut on his back, and he realizes that someone stole his kidney that he was supposed to donate to his granddaughter. In the next scene, we meet Deacon's brother, George. He leads an entirely different life. He is a professor living in Manila. It is his daughter who needs a kidney transplant. George goes to church daily to pray for his daughter, although he no longer believes in himself. He doesn't lose faith in God. The father notices this and approaches to ask him what's wrong.
But I just don't know about my own anymore.
Later, George goes outside and sees on the streets children playing. He begins to cry. While at the hotel, Deacon pulls out his suitcase but doesn't find the gun. He realizes he cannot solve the situation alone and calls a good old friend to help him. Deacon asks him to come as soon as possible and bring boosters.
Where are you?
The golden tree, Rumido tree.
Later, Deacon notices that the one who stole their kidney staged the whole thing as if they agreed to do this operation. They left him a patient's guide to the kidney transplant, money, and medicine for post-operation. Later, his old friend Kung and his aide arrive. Kung notices the puddle of blood and then realizes Deacon has had a kidney stolen.
Oh my God. Your kidney?
But soon after, someone knocks on the door. George goes inside and Kung's aide holds him down. Deacon tells him to leave him alone because he's his brother. George is confused and frustrated when he sees the bed full of blood and the mark on his brother's back. Deacon tells him to go home because he will work things out himself and explain everything to him later. In the end, Kung's aide throws George out and Deacon tells everything as it happened. He reveals that he was seduced by a woman named Anna after she took him to a local club. Nevertheless, Kung assures Deacon that he will find the video camera recordings to find Anna. Kung and his man come out and tell him to keep his guard. Deacon reflects for a moment, remembers the bartender who served him the night before and decides to pay her a visit with a Bible in his hand. When he's about to leave the hotel, he meets George, who's waiting for him.
Whatever I have to. How much time do we have?
Deacon keeps insisting he shouldn't interfere, but George emphasizes that they will do it faster this way. After all, he speaks the local language. They arrive at the bar full of people, even though it's broad daylight outside. The bartender, Bet, asks them what they want to drink and pretends not to speak English. Deacon threatens her that he will ruin her face with a Bible if she doesn't intend to answer his questions. Bet calls security, and here the show begins.
It's time for you to go.
Deacon easily puts the first one down, like drinking a glass of water. Then Kung's aide arrives and knocks down two of them, but then is killed with a glass bottle. Meanwhile, Deacon continues to ground the security guys with the Bible. The priest wasn't kidding when he said that in the Bible, we find strength. Bet realizes the guards don't stand a chance against Deacon and hides in the warehouse. George and Deacon followed her, and she had prepared to attack them with a knife. But again, the Bible saved them. Bet shits herself and reveals everything she knows to Deacon. She tells him that the fake attacker, Drake, paid him off and that Anna ran off with her pimp. She also tells him they went to a fight club called Gladius, but she doesn't know the exact spot because they constantly change locations. After receiving the necessary information, Deacon and George leave the club, but at one point, Deacon feels sick and falls. George calls the ambulance and takes him to the hospital. He wakes up scared next to Kung, but George assures him that no one knows anything. Kung made sure his name wasn't recorded when he was hospitalized.
You're not even checked in. Come to caravan.
George and Kung go out into the hallway to drink water. Kung is surprised when he learns that George knows little about his brother. He doesn't even know how he earns his own money. Kung reveals to him that long ago, he and Deacon were enemies, but they started working together. Speaking of the devil, Deacon prepares to leave, but George tells him that he must not stand still. Kung approaches and tells Deacon that the video recordings of the hotel have been deleted, but he did manage to get the street recordings, where he intercepted Anna and Drake's faces. Deacon asks him if he can find the Gladius Club, which the bartender mentioned. Kung can find it easily, but he doesn't think breaking in with guns is a good idea because the club is under protection. At that point, Deacon tells George to show him what they are fighting so hard for. George shows Kung his daughter, Isabella, who's 9 years old. She has kidney disease, and in 2 days, Deacon was supposed to give her his kidney. Without it, she wouldn't last more than 3 months. At this point, Kung realizes what is at stake and agrees to help them. Later, the three are in the car, and Kung informs Deacon that he will try to locate Anna through her phone and obtain weapons for them. While driving, they realize a black sedan is following them. Deacon says they must lose them and tells Kung to stop the car, to split up. Soon after, Kung asks George how he got to the Philippines, and the man reveals that he had moved in with his wife, who died at age 37 from breast cancer. Later, they arrive at a square, and Kung gets out of the car to get Anna's number. Soon after, Deacon calls George to tell him to hand the phone to Kung, but the old man has just left, so Deacon tells George to park the car to the side of the black sedan to block their way out. George does as he's told, and Deacon appears on the side of the black sedan and begins to beat up the passenger. The latter pulls out a gun, but Deacon blocks his hand with his foot. The guy behind the wheel tries to get out by pushing the car in front, rear-ending it. Finally, the black sedan manages to escape. Deacon picks up the man's gun and climbs into Kung's van to tell George to follow them. George starts to drive, but it is noticeable that he has no experience in such things. Faster! Later, they reach a narrow passage, and Deacon tells him to speed up, confident that they will pass. Nevertheless, George doesn't think so and immediately stops, and the two realize that they can't pass.
Okay. Let's go.
Later that evening, Kung drives while Deacon sleeps in the back. He tells George happily that he has found the Gladius Club where Anna is most likely to be. In addition, Kung is amazed that Deacon still endures such a lifestyle with only one kidney. Kung speaks about God, saying that sometimes he's not fair because he punishes the innocent. George points out that he's a criminal and shouldn't criticize God.
If anything, I blame myself.
A little later, they arrive at the Gladius Club. Several rich people go there to pay money to see poor people fighting. The Triad, a criminal organization, controls the building. Deacon prepares to leave, and George tells him he will go with him. But then Deacon tells him to stay in the car. As soon as he gets inside, Deacon looks for Anna but finds only people watching a fight. The security guards notice Deacon and inform Drake. In the car, George sees Drake enter, and Kung tries to call Deacon on the phone, but he doesn't answer. At that point, George prepares to leave, and Kung gives him a gun. Deacon wanders inside and then goes to the restroom. In the meantime, George is already inside and looking for Deacon. In the restroom, Deacon finds a line of women. When he decides to call Anna, he hears her phone ringing. Anna turns around and sees Deacon. She's startled for a second, and then the two move to a nearby room. Anna reveals that she is an escort, and Drake is her regular client. He paid her $40,000 to seduce him that night, but now she regrets it. She did it for the money, to give up this lifestyle. Suddenly, Anna's pimp appears behind Deacon's back. He's unaware of the situation, and Anna asks Deacon to come up with something. The pimp pulls a gun on him, but Deacon tells him that he's just a friend of hers. At that point, Drake also arrives with a gun in hand. The pimp, confused, asks who he is, and Drake reveals to him that Anna was with Deacon the night before. After that, Drake shoots the pimp, who was an undercover agent. Drake just killed an agent with Deacon's gun, so now he can throw all the dirt on Deacon. Drake tells him that his client, who stole his kidney, is ready to pay more. Deacon refuses, saying he doesn't need the money. At that moment, George also arrives, pointing a gun at Drake. George asks him where the kidney is, but Drake laughs because he doesn't think he can pull the trigger. Drake gets distracted, and Deacon uses this moment to throw a box at him. Everyone starts shooting, and Drake and his men run away. As Deacon and Anna leave, one of Drake's men jumps on him. The two start fighting, and they even get in the middle of the people waiting for a new fight. Deacon knocks him to the ground and breaks his neck. Drake realizes that the situation is bad and runs away. George shoots into the air, creating panic and confusion. Everyone begins to flee the building while Deacon pursues Drake. They shoot at each other as they run, but fail to hit each other. Drake throws a flash bomb and makes a run for it. Deacon quickly recovers, but Drake has already escaped. Later, they are all together in Kung's van. The old man says that Deacon is in danger because mob gang criminals and a policeman are dead. They must escape from the city, but Deacon refuses, saying they must save Isabella.
We are marked men, Deacon.
Kung then reveals to him that they can find a person to steal a kidney from and give it to Isabella, basically what the criminals did with Deacon. Still, George is hesitant because it's not the right thing to do. Kung asks why he doesn't give his kidney to the little girl, but George says he doesn't fit. Then Kung reveals that to remove the kidney, the doctor charges $20,000, money that neither Deacon nor George has. But at that point, hearing the story, Anna takes out the money and gives it to Deacon. Now they have the money for the kidney, but don't know where and from whom to get it. So now they need to find the list of kidney donors. But the problem is that such a list is virtually impossible to get. But George points out that it is difficult.
It's impossible to get to.
But he has a solution. George knows a hacker who is indebted to him, so he has to help him. They reach a building where George and the hacker meet. The young man is a little anxious because he's under house arrest. He asks him who he came with, and George reveals that he has a brother. The hacker then tells him that he doesn't need the list. He need only the person's name at the top of the list, the person who is to have the transplant soon.
I owe you.
The hacker pulls out a list and shows him the man at the top of the list, Simon Rance III. Simon is a 76-year-old entrepreneur who, through connections and money, has managed to get to the top of the line of people waiting for a kidney transplant. The good news is that he lives in the Philippines, so that they can find him easily. George returns to the car and shares the information with everyone. Deacon asks to stop at a motel for the night to think of a plan. George suggests stopping at the summer house he has nearby. As soon as they enter, George reports that the hacker has obtained the floor of the building where Simon Rance III is located. Deacon and Anna look through photos of George and his wife, Mary. Anna realizes that she's very similar to Mary. Then Deacon begins to tell her about their history with George and Mary. When he was still a child, their parents divorced, and Deacon went to live with his father in Europe and George with his mother in the States. During the summer, George would visit Europe on vacation and meet Mary there. But the problem was that Deacon was also in love with her.
So what was the bad boy?
Mary was with Deacon, but then she got tired of his problems, after which she stayed with George. Unfortunately, it turns out that George is infertile after numerous attempts to have a baby. Then it turned out that Mary was pregnant, obviously with Deacon. George forgave Mary in the fact that she cheated on him, but he could never forgive his real brother.
Forgiving my brother, on the other hand.
Then George goes to his room to rest, but he fails because of bad thoughts. Being a religious man, he realizes that he's about to commit many sins. Meanwhile, Kung and Deacon are thinking of a plan to break into the victim's house. Kung tells them they will need special weapons that would cost about $50,000. At this point, George arrives and asks him to cancel the plan because he doesn't want to sin anymore. He claims that his daughter's life is now in God's hands. Deacon tells him that Isabella's life is in their hands, and it is their job to save her. He also blames George for not having Isabella checked long before the problem appeared. In the end, George realizes that he must make sacrifices if he wants to save Isabella, and he reveals that Mary left about $50,000 in an account before she died and gave it to Kung to buy weapons. Later, George makes coffee for everyone and Deacon notices an ace of spades hidden behind a photo. He immediately tells them to move away from the windows and sees Kung opening the refrigerator. It is a trap to kill them, but Kung is not in time to get away. Everyone is fine except him.
Was it Drake?
Later that night, they reach the big house of Simon III. Deacon gets ready to go out and tells Anna and George to stay inside. Deacon enters the property like a ninja and knocks out a couple of guards. After that, he installs explosive devices and returns to the car. Now, it's on to phase 2 of the plan. Deacon will enter the house with a camera on his head. George will see everything on a screen. When Deacon returns to the main gate, George must destroy it with the vehicle, pick up Deacon, and escape. Deacon knows George well, and before leaving, he handcuffs him to the car. He then gives the key to Anna and tells him not to let him out under any circumstances. Deacon enters the property again and gives the signal to George, who detonates the devices. Security guards immediately begin to chase Deacon, but the lights are out. Deacon has night vision goggles, so he has a small advantage, but not for long, because afterward, lights powered by another generator light up. Deacon finds himself alone against all the guards, and he's shot in the camera at one point. George thinks he's been shot in the head, but then he hears gunshots and realizes he's still alive. George tells Anna she must help him and asks her for the keys, but she refuses. At that point, George drives his car into the house's garden and Anna gives him the keys. George takes a grenade and gets out of the car. He throws it near the main entrance and kills one of the guards. This distracts the others, and Deacon manages to put down a few of them. George goes back into the car and gets a shotgun, although he doesn't really know how to use it. Deacon reaches a room upstairs and finds Simon Rance III reading a book. He's not scared at all because Drake appears behind Deacon. Drake grabs his gun and is about to kill him, but Deacon hits him in the leg and the two begin hand-to-hand combat. Meanwhile, George has already entered the house and manages to kill a guard. He then reaches the upstairs room and finds the two fighting. Drake taunts him, saying he doesn't have the guts to shoot, but George shoots him in the armored vest and sends him flying. He tries to shoot again, but he has no bullets left. Meanwhile, Simon is reaching for a gun, but Deacon stops him. Drake gets the better of George, but then Deacon threatens him with a gun. Drake asks him to fight again, but by now, he has lost too much blood and falls to the ground. Then, they go to Simon to get his kidney out, but George realizes it is too lively to be post-op. In fact, after checking, they realize that he's not Simon Rance III. Deacon suggests they check the other rooms and find the real individual who took Deacon's kidney. He is none other than a 12-year-old boy. George points his weapon at him, saying that Isabella needs the kidney, but Deacon stops him and convinces him that he will regret it later. The next day, Deacon and George visit Isabella in the hospital. Deacon sees her for the first time, but George notices he's bleeding while holding her. At that point, Deacon knows he is dying and tells George to take his second kidney and give it to Isabella. The little girl is saved in the end, thanks to Deacon's second kidney. A year later, she and George visit the graves of Mary and Deacon, and with them is Anna, who is now with George.